Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Thirsty Thursday live stream. In tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about CTFs, CTF platforms, and so much more. So if you guys are new to the stream, new to the channel, please like, subscribe, and all that stuff. We're literally like 400 subscribers away from 100,000, which I'm fucking stoked. I want to say thank you for all the support, and I'm super grateful for every single one of you guys. So and tonight, we're going to be bringing in Ryan, and we're going to be talking about his journey, and he'll introduce himself. Here he is.
What's up, guys?
What's up, Ryan? Finally, we got on the chat since we tried to do this plenty of times ago, and finally we got this thing.
I think we've been doing it for trying to get on for 2 years, a year and a half now. We finally got it.
Yeah, I'm super stoked, super excited about tonight, and yeah, so, who is Ryan? What has Ryan been up to these days? And do a little intro. Let's.
Yeah, so my day-to-day, I'm an enterprise pen tester by day, and then I run a platform called Parrot CTFs. Sort of do that after hours. My day job, of course, is enterprise pen testing. I'm pen testing banks. Pen testing, small businesses, doing compliance tests, lovely reporting, all that lovely jazz. That's pretty much it.
Nice. So from your day-to-day job, and we'll get into the whole CTF, the platform and all that stuff. So on your day-to-day job, what is your favorite part of being a pen tester, and then your least favorite part?
I'll start off with the least favorite. The least favorite is getting on the nonstop client calls just for them to tell us that it's working on their machine. Great, it's working on your machine. Well, it's not working on my machine, so can we focus on getting it to work on my machine?
Mm-hmm.
And just the nonstop back and forth just to get some passwords and stuff like that. I like reporting. It's super time consuming. Most of the time it's templated, but I love grabbing that evidence and showcasing my findings. Many people think that pen testing is just nonstop hacking. It's 20% hacking and then 80% reporting. The hacking is fun. I constantly get new and different types of web applications, APIs, thick clients, all kinds of new stuff to test. It's always something new, not really ever getting the same web app twice. So super exciting. That's pretty much all I do. Sometimes I'll help out with retesting. And basically what retesting is, for people that don't know, is after a pen test has been completed, the clients will need to remediate those findings, right? Now, after the client remediates those findings, then they'll actually kick us back that report again, and we'll go ahead and retest and make sure that they actually fixed it, and that there's no other ways in.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, that's definitely, super interesting to know for those folks that aren't familiar with, like you said, retesting and what is the whole point of that and all that stuff. So we'll pivot into what tonight's subject is all about. The show is all about CTF. So tell us a little bit about why you created your own CTF platform, and what is the platform? What do you what is it all about?
So there's a few reasons why I created it. One of the reasons why I created it is when I first started learning, the accessibility of these higher quality lab machines, they were always $20, $50, $60. And back when I was 18, I didn't have that kind of money to just go off and spend. And when I did, I was buying books, and then I had I didn't have anything left over for lab machines. So one of the reasons why I created it was to make it a little bit more accessible, because it's our platform is only $8 a month, right? That's a lot more accessible to access everything on the platform than it is $20 and $50 and stuff like that. Another thing that I noticed was a lot of the CTFs that I was doing wasn't as realistic as I wanted it to be. A lot of them were very game focused. And there was a lot of labs that just weren't covering specific topics that I wanted to learn. Like back when I was studying, the XXE vulnerability, there was like maybe 2 labs on XXE. There was one on TryHackMe, which was fairly decent, but it was just like an input field, and like there's only one place to put it. Like I'm not hunting for it. I'm not like understanding how the vulnerability works. I'm just entering a payload and watching it execute. And I just did not like that.
Yeah.
So I sort of sat back and thought to myself, well, what if I could just create my own platform and start
Yep.
creating these labs that I was missing during the times when I was learning? So like I created one of my favorite lab machines is Blogger. It's a blog that's vulnerable to XXE, but you have to understand XXE. You have to learn it. You have to understand what the XML parser is doing, all of that lovely stuff. And it sort of puts you in that real world scenario of if you were to come across a blog, how would you go about searching for that XXE? And it's stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, there's tons of realistic labs out there. Just from what I seen, there just wasn't enough. So I wanted to add my own.
Yeah. And that's super, super cool because I felt the same way back in 2018 when I was doing, for example, studying for OSCP and these certifications. It was like, it was very CTF-y, right? It was like you said, gamified CTF-y. And, buffer overflows. I've been doing this for a couple of years now. I never been on an engagement that I had to like do a buffer overflow.
Yeah.
Even recently, I just did like Dante from Hack the Box, and there was one buffer overflow, but I was able to do it by not really doing it. If that makes sense. Like I was like, okay, like I have to figure out a way that I don't have to, look at the memory and overload this and all this stuff to get it. But it was really interesting. So what are your takes on like the Hack the Box and TryHackMe's and whatever the other one, Pico CTF and all these other CTF platforms? What do you have your own, you have it more realistic. You want it like, okay, if I'm going to come into your lab or come into this lab setup, this is something I can probably run into tomorrow on an engagement. Right? It's not like, okay, now I have to, for an example, like when I just did Dante, well, I guess I'm not even sure if we could talk about it, but there was, a vulnerability with like PrivEsk and all that stuff. It's like, how often do you have to really do these crazy PrivEsk things in the real world? Hardly ever. And like we just talked about off air, right? Like for normally when you're pen testing, if you get that RCE on a machine, you're able to get user access. You prove to them like we compromised your machine. We have that POC, and then take a snippet, say, okay, we were here. I could put a little document on your, on your desktop. We gotcha. And that's it. You don't have to go through and all this crazy shit. Right. So, so going back to my question was, what is your take on like the platforms like Hack the Box and TryHackMe's and all that?
Well, I will tell you a little bit about our PrivEsk before I get into that. So some of our PrivEsk are literally just sudo-su, right? Like you're going to come across Linux machines out there that you already have root access, and I've just never seen that on Hack the Box. I've always seen like there's some calculator or something that you have to like go run and try and like, or some like set UID that is just so bizarre that I just would not ever see that, or some command that has no like standing in the specific server that I'm in. I do think that they're great practice if you are like a beginner and just want to get that repetitive mindset, because a lot of Hack the Box's boxes they're going to be nmap, GoBuster, OSINT repeat, nmap, GoBuster, OSINT repeat. At least a lot of the easy and mediums are. I haven't been on Hack the Box in like a year and a half, so I don't know what a lot of their newer ones are. But I do remember that there was this one Android machine that I despised. If I remember correctly, it was just an Android OS running Apache with a screenshot of a sticky note and then that's how you got your access. And I thought, what kind of ridiculous shit is this? Right? It was supposed to be an Android. I was like, I was looking, I was expecting to find some sort of APK file that I was going to like maybe reverse engineer that, or maybe it's some mobile app that's running on the system and I have to like use Netcat to connect. None of that. It was just a screenshot on an Apache server, and I was like, this is basically a web app.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that that you might run into that in the real world, but that's not mobile to me, right?
Yeah.
And then there's other things like Hack the Box Forest, which is an AD lab. I think you've done Hack the Box
Yep.
Forest on
Yep.
your platform. Yeah. That's a great one. It covers Kerber roasting, and that's something you'll see. And what's interesting about Kerber roasting is in order to make a user vulnerable to Kerber roasting in a domain controller, it's literally a single click of a button. I think it's like, do not require pre-authentication or something, and bam, it's vulnerable to Kerber roasting, which is wild to me. But that's a great lab to practice AD. I haven't done Dante yet. I have looked at some of like the unofficial write-ups and did take a look at that. I think that a lot of their pro labs aren't as realistic either. I mean, from what I looked at Dante, it was basically a bunch of Linux servers running like FTP, SMB, and they were like one-off things for each individual server. None of them were really super patched. Don't quote me on that. I haven't done it yet, right?
Yeah.
But that was my sort of impression of it. And now I'm going to create my own version of Dante called Nexus, which is just a replication of a corporate environment just like that. But there's going to be machines that aren't vulnerable to anything. There's going to be fully patched machines. And then that sort of puts you in that environment of, okay, I mean, that mindset of, okay, not everything's going to be vulnerable. Because that's another thing about CTFs is it's not preparing you for when something just isn't vulnerable. Like, it's vulnerable. It's just a matter of finding that vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think that can be damaging sometimes to some newer users.
No, I agree totally, because it's like, now when you're going into something like, CRTP, right? It's a fully patched environment.
Oh yeah.
I haven't taken that exam yet, but it's fully patched AD, Windows. I think they were even updated the old Windows 11 machines, 2022 servers.
Yeah.
And it's like, now we have to, using PowerShell and I think everything's in Windows. Like there's, it's abusing AD, and it's like RDPing from one box to another and just like using PowerShell to do 98% of it. And it's like, okay, like this is more the real world, because it's like, I've done
living off the land. Because I mean, if you're doing a red team operation, you're inside of someone's computer. You might not have access to Python. You might not have access to like a GCC compiler. You need to or like a sysinternal suite. And if you just start downloading these things from the internet, that's how you get caught, right?
Yeah.
So you got to live off the land. You got to figure out what's already there, and that's really what's what challenges a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So yeah, like I wonder if my thing is connected to LinkedIn, because usually I want to see something really quick. Maybe it is.
Miss Sinful said, I'm teaching myself through online classes. Is your site so usable if I'm learning? So one of the things that we did, if you watched Heath Adams' video yesterday, if you didn't, go watch that. That was a great video. He had talked about working backwards to getting like a lot of the beginner people in, and that's sort of what we did to start. We started with a lot of the like super beginner stuff, and then we started working with some more intermediate stuff, some more advanced stuff, and now we launched like all of the above. Like every 3 days we may launch a medium, an easy, a hard, or we might launch like a red team lab that's intermediate. So they are available for like all levels. And that's another thing that I was always struggling with. After I got my foundation, it was very hard for me to like build on top of that afterwards. Because like all the labs I was looking at was very like straightforward with this is the fundamentals, right?
Hmm.
Or it just wasn't realistic.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the harder ones are just hard for the sake of being hard, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't like just challenging my skills. Like, okay, this is vulnerable to XSS, but it's not a basic XSS. We need to do some like intense filter bypasses, right? Just stuff like that. So that's something that we keep in mind when we launch out these machines.
Yeah. And that's definitely some good stuff. So I am on LinkedIn, so I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure because usually there's people that from LinkedIn. I just wanted to make sure that thing was connected because I know Restream was actually giving me some issues, so I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure all this stuff was connected. But I don't think it's connected to Twitter though, and because I'm just looking at like up here, it's only
Who knows with what Elon's doing over at Twitter? Who
yeah,
knows?
yeah, that's a good point.
He might take away the API tomorrow. Who knows?
Yeah. So let's see. I'm finding a CTF on Triac Me a bit easy. I may need to challenge myself there. Yeah, Miss. Like I think there's some. There's definitely. I'm not really the best CTF player. I'm not really a good CTF, and that's why I was like lately. I'm like, okay, like I know there's going to probably be some stuff at DEF CON, and it
Yeah.
was last year, and I participated in one, and I'm like, fuck, I'm stupid with this stuff, right? Um, and then I'm like, okay, like how can I challenge myself? And someone was like, oh, do the Dante, and just to get more
Yeah.
in the swing of things. And I'm like, all right. And I don't know, like if in the last year, I don't know, like I've gotten a lot better at them, but I'm not practicing them. So I don't know if it's
Yeah.
something that switched off in my head, like, oh shit, like now it's actually doable. Like, I don't know, like if it's, I don't know. But going back to like the I wanted to pivot into like certifications.
Yeah.
So for someone that, at such a younger age, getting into the world of pen testing, what has been like, what has been your journey, like getting into the world of cyber, like, and why did you pivot into pen testing? Was it like certifications or was it,
Yeah.
what was
So
your interest?
my pen testing journey started when I was 15. So, like many others, my childhood was not the greatest. I was
Hmm.
inside of mental health facilities most of my childhood.
Hmm.
And inside of one of these mental health facilities, I met someone who wanted to be a pen tester. And me being being a rebel, I heard hacking companies breaking into stuff like, but it's legal. That sounds like hella fun, right? So
Yeah.
after I heard about it, I went over to ask him like questions. I wanted to know more. How do I get started? What do I need? And then after I got out, I was put into an alternative school, and I was just so far behind with grades, etc., that I dropped out to get my GED. And during that time, this is like 2019ish. So during that time, I was doing like half GED because it's only like 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day. And then when I got home, I was buying books. I was donating plasma to have money to buy books. Like I was just hustling out here, trying to get as much information as possible. I was hanging out at the library, checking out whatever books they had. Um, and then COVID started, and
Hmm.
that gave me the perfect time. Nothing was open, right? Everybody was at home. So I was just studying 8 hours, 16 hours a day, getting certifications. And then when I was 18, I figured, no one's going to hire me. I'm 18. I may work a few jobs here and there, get more money, put it into education. So I started my own company, and me being an 18-year-old know-it-all thought that I could just start a consulting firm and it was going to take off. But during that time, I was learning just a ton of stuff. No, it didn't take off. Surprise. But while I was trying to get it to take off, I was learning just so much stuff. And I got the attention of a CTO at Cointelegraph. And Cointelegraph is a crypto news outlet. It's like one of the third biggest crypto news outlets. I got the attention of them and a head of DevOps and IT security. So they approached me. They wanted me to be their like junior security engineer and help them start out like their SecOps department. So I took that. I think at this point I had the EJPT and maybe the ECPPT or something like that. The ECPPT is like an intermediate hacking certification. You got some Windows machines, some Linux machines. I like to consider it an OSCP equivalent, but without like the capture the flags, kind of, right? And you got to write a report and everything. So I had that, and I was 18 at this time, and I got my first job. It was $60,000 a year, which was insane to me. 18, $60,000 a year. Everybody out here is making like 20,000, working at like Walmart and McDonald's and stuff like that. And I'm in an enterprise environment, learning from a CTO and a department head about how to write professional emails, how to connect with people without like, in corporate environments, you have to have like certain corporate speak, not to piss everyone off. I was like learning that kind of stuff from them. And I, the moment I got hired, I basically told myself like, hey, I'm gonna take this for granted. Like I'm going to learn as much as possible. And around this time, Parrot CTFs was sort of just still kind of like a home lab. It started off as a home lab, literally just running off my PC that's just right next to me. That's all it was. So I took whatever money that I wasn't using as like livable expenses, and I was just putting it into Parrot CTFs. And then whenever I had time, I was building lab machines. I learned PHP, MySQL, HTML, and CSS building the platform. So I became a developer just by building the platform. I learned, GitHub, Bitbucket, how to set up Jira boards, which then I used inside of Cointelegraph, setting up my own Jira boards for like security stuff. And then about 6 months later, it was wild, but like the entire team got laid off. So I was out of a job. But using the skills that I learned there and using the certifications that I got an interview with Prescient Security, which is where I work now doing enterprise pen tests. I nailed the interview, nailed the lab, and they didn't care about the certifications that I had. They just cared that I knew what I was talking about.
So talking about the interview, when you say you nailed an interview, for those people like probably can ask that, like, what do you mean by nail? Like, what was it that you felt in yourself that you're like, fuck, I rocked this thing. This is my job.
Besides them telling me that I was doing great, also like just every single question I answered with confidence. I knew all the basic questions that they were going to ask. I went off to YouTube. Like I did interview prep. I didn't just YOLO this interview. I did go inside of YouTube. I looked at previous interviews, how they conducted their interviews, how the interviewees responded. I looked up like common interview questions, made sure that I knew the answers to all of them, like top 10 interview questions for pen testers and stuff like that. So by the time I got into the interview, I was super confident. And when there wasn't something that I knew, I just let them know, hey, can we come back to this? And I think that a lot of people, once they know that like they don't know the answer to that, they think they're going to fail the whole interview. And I promise you, this is the advice that I got told by people who do interviews. They're in the same boat as you. They're probably just as confused or scared or like, oh my God, is this actually the right answer? I promise you, it's just treat it as a discussion between two colleagues, and you're going to nail it.
Yeah.
If you don't know the answer to something, that's fine. To this day, I'm still pulling up hack tricks. I'm still pulling up all of these cheat sheets. I know SQL, and I'm still pulling up SQL documentation. Okay, so you're not going to know everything. I promise you, they're not going to expect you to know everything. They just want you to know enough, and then when you get the job, you'll learn the rest. Yeah. Right? They just want to know that you're not just some schmuck that wants to go and start being a pen tester and doesn't even know what IMAP is. Right? Yeah. That's really what the technical interview is. And then after usually interviews that I do are broken down into 3 or 4 sections. You'll have your HR, and that's really just like who are you? What certifications do you have? What experience do you have? And then you'll meet with a team member and you'll like do the technical interview. And then maybe you'll meet with some with like a department head afterwards and like
Hmm.
get to know them. And then they'll give you like a technical challenge, like a CTF or something. And as long as you like really take your time on it and nail each individual portion, there's like a 70% chance they're going to hire you.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important. And in the past, I've interviewed, and there's a lot of things that I don't know, right? And
Yeah,
I'm always very, and the one thing I like to say, and I don't know if this is just me being very straight up in an
yeah,
interview, like I don't get nervous. I just, if I don't know something, I don't know it. And I remember one time, it was many years ago, but they asked me a question, and this was when I was getting into the world of cyber and hacking.
yeah,
They asked me something with like SQL injection or something like
yeah,
that, and I said, "Can you go to my resume, do a Control F, and put
yeah.
SQLI?" It's not
Right.
on there, so don't ask me anything that's not
Yeah.
on my resume because I don't know it. Right? Like
And
I'm,
I've
yeah,
had experiences with interviews where they were asking questions that I knew what they were asking, but it did not make sense. The
yeah,
question they were asking is not how it works. That it doesn't make sense. And I'll try to answer as best as I can. But if you're asking me a question and this just does not make sense,
yeah,
like let's move on. You know?
yeah. And yeah, if anyone has questions in the chat,
Yeah,
obviously, like we'll definitely get some. Usually,
yeah,
like the last 20 minutes, we'll look and see
yeah.
what's in there. So just hang out until the end, guys. But
Yep.
yeah, I think that's super important for folks to know
Yeah,
because interviews are, I think they can be intimidating for some
yeah,
folks. And I think I only had one intimidating experience. And it was when I went to, and I wasn't expect. I think it was more like I was expecting to meet with the team lead or the manager or
yeah.
whatever. And then when I hit, I joined their Zoom or whatever it was like, holy shit, there's 5 people on this.
Oh my god, yeah, I got one of those, and I like freaked out and couldn't answer any of their questions. It was like
Yeah,
5 dudes and then just me.
yeah,
Like,
and yeah, it was literally four. It was actually 4 people and me because
yeah,
I remember like the squares, and I remember like one person asking a question, and then the next person, and I'm like, how about we
yeah,
just stay on track? Like if we're talking
right,
about like one asking, okay, when you're on an inside of a network, what would you do to enumerate and get to
yeah,
domain admin? This guy's asking me, okay, on your social engineering skills, what would you?
yeah,
I'm like, holy
right,
shit, whoa,
yeah,
hold on, you know. And I think that happens if those folks
yeah,
want to know why that happens, is because probably those 4 people or maybe 2 or 3 people on that interview have different experience and different
yeah,
niches, right? Like this guy probably is a really good, like Heath Adams, like he said on my thing, he's
yeah,
like, I'm fucking kill it. I could run circles around some people on an internal, but
yeah,
maybe on a web app, he's no Siberius or whoever else is like
yeah,
running circles. So it's like, that's what I think happens. It's like you go into the interview, like one guy is a really good internal guy, one guy is a really good whatever web app guy. So they'll
yeah,
ask you those questions, what they're really good at, and that they know the answer. And I literally, and I don't know if I ever said this, but literally, like during that interview, I was like, I'm good, guys, and I literally
yeah,
just hung up. I just
yeah. A,
left the
a,
meeting.
lo- a lot of times people also have to realize that a lot of these people that are conducting these technical interviews are your peers.
Yeah,
Right? They're literally going to be your same level. So if they mess up on something, just keep that in mind that, hey, they're literally you, but they're just
yep,
already in the company. And a lot
yep,
of times people also forget to ask questions too. Like this is
yeah,
your interview too. Ask them
yeah,
questions.
yep,
And if their question does not make sense, challenge it. You're
yeah,
like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you like rephrase it?
yeah,
Or is this what you're talking about? Like it's your interview too.
yeah,
Take control of that interview.
yeah, absolutely, and that's awesome advice because I think, you know, everyone has their niche, and I think just
Yeah,
like focus on your niche and
yeah,
don't go out of that.
yeah,
Like right now, like me and some peers and some friends, we did a few certifications. We're like a group that we study together, study group. And it's like now we're probably going to go do some red team stuff, some web app stuff. Hopefully they're watching this now. They said they're going to check this out. And I'm like, awesome. Like, but we have to figure out what we're going to learn, how we're going to learn it. And one thing, at least with me, is like, if I'm learning it, literally, I said this yesterday on our call last night. I was like, everything that we did with Dante, I literally fucking forgot. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
I don't remember every fucking thing I did. Like, I don't remember all the challenges or anything like that. It's like, I remember like some of the techniques, but there's so many things. And
I used to be a boss at AD. I could like hack circles around some of these people with AD. But ever since I moved into API and web app and all these thick client stuff, I forgot a lot of AD. Like I was sitting at my terminal and it's like, sudo impact it. And I'm just like, I'm looking through every single one of them, looking like, what the hell am I looking for?
Yeah.
What am I trying to do?
Yeah.
I just like forget how to do some things.
Absolutely.
So if you're not, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, absolutely.
Yeah. If you're not constantly practicing some stuff will get lost. And I mean, that's why cheat sheets exist. You think I remember every SQL injection login bypass that's out there? Literally, I'll type in SQL injection login bypass cheat sheet. Bam. I know what it's doing. I can read it, but I'm not remembering that specific little thing.
Exactly.
I gotta look it up.
Yeah. So going into that, like when you say cheat sheet, do you use ChatGPT? Do you use like cheat sheets? You said hack. What is it? Trick hacks or hack tricks?
Hack tricks. Yeah. So hack tricks has it's a huge manual of like, oh my god, let me actually pull it up. I can just like list off some of the things. Let me pull it up here. There's like, external recon methodology, pen testing network, pen testing Wi-Fi, and it goes into like every little thing. There's like commands you can run, get links out like external resources. So if I'm doing an Active Directory pen test, I'll just pull open the Active Directory methodology. I'll look at some of this stuff like, okay, recon AD, no creds, no sessions. Okay, well, we don't have creds when we're first starting. Let's just see what we can find, right?
Exactly.
And then like Stobuster, Enum for Linux, SMB map, SMB client. Yep, that one right there. It's great. And all of my colleagues at Prescient use it as well. It's a great resource. So whenever there's like something specific that I'm trying to pen test and I want to look at, I'll just look up a cheat sheet for it. And then there's like payloads, all the things. Like, I don't remember how to do a Python reverse shell half the time. So I'm going to look up what that is, right?
And they were like, I was doing that the other day, like the Python, Spone, T, whatever. I don't remember. I don't remember any of that shit. And for some people, they just know it in the back of their hand. I think that's more like CTF-y, in my opinion. That's like, like
they're doing it every single day. They just know it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, like, or like the, what is the other one to get like a shell? There's that one. And there's
there's like Python 3 tag C import pty.spawn bin bash or something like that. And I know that because I do CTFs all the time. That's the only reason why I use that.
Yeah. So I want to ask, like, so those folks, because we saw some people in the chat, like, okay, like they want to learn more about CTFs and all that stuff. And obviously, there's a lot of huge CTFers, right? Like John Hammond, right? He's an awesome CTFer. What do you think? Like, how do I want to ask this question? Like, how do you think CTFs relate to real engagements?
It depends on the CTF, where you're doing the CTF, who's hosting the CTF. A lot of them can relate to real world engagements, but I think it's the methodology that matters. Like, I think you were talking in one of your videos about like using IPSec as a resource and you just had no idea what he was talking about. And then you looked at somebody else and they knew what, then you're like, oh yeah, that clicks. Those are the different methodologies. And you can use those methodologies when you're enumerating any application. I mean, you're doing Nmap, you're going to find the open ports. Using GoBuster, you're going to find the directories and the subdomains. So it's about that methodology. So it doesn't necessarily matter that the application you're pen testing, like a WordPress CTF, like you can still use a lot of that methodology on an actual WordPress site, as long as it's like a WordPress vulnerability or something specifically around WordPress and not something custom they just built into it, right?
Yeah, no, that's totally true. Let me see if there was. I want to put this one up here real quick. Is it true? Employees look at things like Try Hack Me and Hack the Box for your badges if you're trying to get a job?
I think it's 50-50, to be honest. I've seen some that are like, oh, that's cool. And then I've seen others that's like, okay. And then they just continue the interview like, okay, and what is, DNS? They're like, okay, cool. What's the, they just ignore it. So I think it's 50-50. It definitely doesn't hurt. I mean, if you're like top 2% on Try Hack Me, put that on your LinkedIn profile. Put it on your resume. Because that means you're actively doing labs. That means you're actively doing stuff. You had to get to 2%.
Yeah.
If you have a certain level on a platform, like put that level. That means that you've done some of those labs. And at least you know a little bit about pen testing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think they're going to solely hire you based on having pro hacker status on Hack the Box, though. But I think that it won't hurt.
Yeah. No, most definitely. So let's see. I have a friend that let's put this one up. What is he saying?
Yeah.
I have a friend that's in HE department conducts interviews for his company. He's once told me that queues and sequence estimate the difference risk and level cost.
Oh my God. I couldn't even answer that. And I use SQL Map on like every other pen test.
Yeah.
Like I read the man pages.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to memorize what each individual script means, except on like Nmap, SV enumerate versions, SC default script. Like I know that because it's just something that I do all the time.
Yeah.
But like using levels and user agents and like bypassing captchas, and I'm not doing that on a regular basis.
Yeah. No, facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's blah, blah, blah. I just want to look at the other. I use Hack Tricks, amazing source. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it's so interesting, just to see how other people, think and what kind of interview questions, because, I get asked that too. Like when I was, director of OffSec, like what kind of questions do I ask the testers that we bring on? Right.
Yeah.
And, I always just talk about like, your basic stuff. I think more about the personality and, you have to, if we're going to bring you in as like an absolute, like a junior, okay. Yeah. Like understanding.
If the clients aren't going to like you, there's no point in hiring you. Right.
Exactly.
And I mean, some of the questions that I get asked are like, they're like stupid simple to know. They're like, what are some HTTP methods? What are some default headers? Construct me in your mind like how a HTTP request looks. What is your basic toolkit? Like, what are you using on every engagement? If you see, and they might like look up a specific error or something. Like if you see this error, what are you going to try next? They'll ask questions like, and sometimes they'll actually ask me like how to fix things too, which is pretty interesting. Like I'm not ever gonna fix it, but they'll ask. Like that's the client's job, but I'm not ever gonna fix it. But they'll ask me questions like, okay, there's an XXE on this web application. They're using a parser to parse through, I don't know, an XML they use for, who the fuck knows, right?
Yeah.
And how there's XXE on it. How are you going to fix it? What functions are you going to put on there? And I guess they sort of asked this for like, if you were going to write a report manually, what are the recommendations you're going to give the client, right?
Exactly. The remediation plan. Yeah. Yeah. And I never understood that either. Yeah. Like, because even like, it's like, okay, I want to tell you what to fix, but I'm not going to really fix it. And if I never
Yeah.
fixed it, how do I know how to fix it?
Right. And
Right.
what's even more hilarious is most of these companies are using PlexTrack, AttackForge, all these like template, and then the findings are already there's like a findings knowledge base. And you're just clicking it in, it has the recommendation, it has the like CVSS score, it has
Yeah.
the whatever risk it is, it's
Yeah.
explaining the finding, and all you have to do is take a screenshot, paste it in, bam, your findings there.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't even have to know what the remediation is. They
You just have
already
to
put
make
it
sure
there.
you just have to make sure
Yeah.
you know how to use screenshot, like
Right.
green shot and fucking
Yeah.
or flame. What is the other one? Flame shot or flamethrower?
Yeah. And then
Flame
you have
shot.
to know the finding name.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, okay. Yeah, exactly. And it's so true. And that's what like sometimes like going back to, like some of these exams, I understand like the purpose of like writing
Yeah.
reports like OSCP and even PMPT, PJPT. I'm not sure like if and you said like the EPP whatever the fuck the e-learn
Yeah.
script.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to write a report, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think do you think it's have you ever used like an automated process or automated scripts or something like that to write your report, or is it always manual when you did your exams?
When I first started out, I was doing it manual, but then like INE will always like reject it for being unprofessional. So, and if you're spending, 8 hours just trying to get a nice table of contents, a nice little graphic for like, this is my pentest report presented by Ryan for this specific web app. We're going and writing the executive summary. We're really decking it out, and then they just say, nope, not professional enough. It really hurts.
Yeah.
So, I will use like AttackForge to write a lot of my stuff, unless an exam. Yep.
AttackForge?
Yep, AttackForge. It's a vulnerability management and pen testing like remediation platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never actually heard of them. Yeah, pen test management and reporting made easy. Oh, nice. Yep. I know PlexTrack, but I never heard of these.
Unless an exam like specifically mentions that you have to create it manually, I don't think I've ever seen that. Then you can use those tools and then worry less about the reporting and more about the actual findings that you found.
Yeah, and that's what like I always try to like convey to people, because people think like when they're doing these pen tests, they're doing all this stuff like on these exams, it's like fuck, now I have to sit here and like you said, take those pretty pictures and put it into format and all this stuff. It's like that's
not going to happen in a pen test company. Any pen test company making you manually create your reports is that's sketchy. What kind of processes do they got going on? Because that's like such a huge waste of time to do that when you're already waiting for access that takes forever. You do the pen test and then you have to go create a manual report. Nobody has time for that. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that and other people hear that, because I always wondered that, like, I've used PlexTrack and it's super, super simple. And it's like, man, obviously, like when you have PlexTrack, it's, it's assigned to your organization. So it's like hard to like utilize that but for example, like this AttackForge, is it the same thing as like PlexTrack?
It is, and it's only like it's $50 a month. I want to say only $50, but $50 can be a lot for some people.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. I do want to mention that creating these reports manually is not necessarily bad for you. It helps you understand how to write up specific evidence, how it gets you like familiarized with what the remediations actually are. So you're not just blindly pasting findings that okay, this looks good enough, looks like this to me, and then you just put the evidence in there, and then QA's over here sighing, and that has to give you a hard time because that's not what this finding is. That's not what this finding is.
Yep.
So it definitely helps. Like, but if you already know all of that stuff and you're on your like 4th or 5th exam, use the automation. Use the templates. If you already
Yeah.
know it, no point in creating it from scratch.
Yeah, no, I agree. And
Yeah.
I'm asking that because, all of my exams I've always done manual.
Yeah.
I have my template, but I still have to
Yeah.
like fucking do it all manuals. I'm like, I wonder if there's a better way. And it's
Yeah.
especially if I want to continue doing it, like maybe
Yeah.
CRTP and CRTO and more TCM stuff.
And
Because
if you need practice too, like create pen test reports on your CTFs. You know how many
yeah,
CTFs on there doesn't have SSL? That's a finding, right? You know how many how many CTFs out here don't have HTTP only on their cookies or missing certain headers.
yeah,
Those are low-level findings.
yeah,
Write a pen test report on every single finding you find. It does not matter if you don't get remote code execution. Just as much as possible, like find every single finding you can,
yeah,
because I promise you, like a lot of these pen test reports, I've literally submitted a pen test report with HTTP only missing on a session ID, and that was the only finding in the report. It was a low-level finding. They probably didn't care about it, but it's a finding nonetheless.
yeah. So I
Right?
wanted to add, talking about that and this, because we'll be wrapping it up shortly.
Yeah.
So this will be like the last conversation. So
Yeah.
what has been your most exciting pen test and finding, and why?
Oh my God.
Like, oh shit, like,
My very first client application that I ever did, I found a DLL hijacking, which led to remote code execution. And that was amazing. I love that. It was my very first thick client. I had done a few lab machines, but I take lab machines converting to, real world with a grain of salt, right?
yeah,
And I found DLL hijacking. I think it was already reported. They called it a low. I said, bullshit, this is not a low. And then I
yeah,
put my own evidence in there, challenged them, got it through as a high. And that was
yeah.
on my very first official thick client pen test. And that was amazing. I loved that. That was super exciting.
And I think you just answered the other one.
Yeah.
So, like, what is your most boring? Like, have you ever been on a test, whatever, network, web app, any test that you've done that you didn't find anything? Like they had that shit, all the P's and Q's intact, and you're like, oh, fuck.
We have had a few people, I think, that have not found some findings, but I haven't ever had a pen test where I haven't found at least something.
Mhm.
Right? It might have been like a header. It might have been like something suspicious on the machine. It might have been, a cookie finding, something low level, but I've always found at least something.
Yeah.
And I mean, in most systems, there's always something you can do, at least one more thing to make it a little bit more secure. Right?
And it's funny because, a lot of people know, like, I don't do really web app testing, but I remember my last company, I did like the last 2 days of a web app because one of the guys that were on it got really sick. It was during COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, like, please don't fucking assign me. This place will burn down. And literally, like, I don't know, like, how I even found this tool. I think I accidentally found it, but I was like, I thought I was in fucking Google. And this is the gun. I don't think I ever said this story, but I thought I was in Google, but I was in my terminal. Like, I didn't, like, I had them side by side because I have a widescreen.
Yeah.
And I thought I clicked into, Google, and I put what web something, and what web was a fucking tool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And I didn't know that. So
I do that all the time. I'll like, I do it vice versa. I think I'm in the terminal and I'll randomly text someone LS or like CD downloads, and they're like, "What in the world are you talking about?"
Yeah. So like when I put like what web, and then like whatever dash whatever, and like, and I remember seeing like, okay, now it just gave me Apache, or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
And from there, and the person that was on, we're talking about the CMS application WordPress. And then I'm like, oh shit, like, and I know WP scan. See, like, sometimes I don't think I give myself enough credit, and I say this a lot. And I'm like, okay, like, I know how to enumerate users. I know how to check for, outdated themes and plugins and all this shit with WordPress. I'm like, oh shit, like, let's see what they're running. And they were running some older version of their plugin or whatever. And then when we got into there, I just tried admin something, and I tried some of their, because we didn't know all the credentials. It was a gray box assessment.
Yeah.
And then, but obviously when you're going to WP-admin, you could put, like, for example, admin, if it has, like, the user's successful, but the password, it says like this. Yeah. And if not, it says like user doesn't exist or whatever fucking thing.
That's what I hate about WordPress is they literally give you that user enumeration on their login page. Yeah. And like whenever we see that on a web application, we immediately report that, because why are you telling us that the user exists or not exists? Exactly. Stop telling people that. To answer Hunter's question, what is pen testing? It's the act of trying to breach a system.
I don't know, like, if that's a real question or if that's just like a troll question. I don't know.
Maybe.
That's why I ignored it. But
yeah,
because he had that little skull thing. I'm like, I don't know if he's just fucking around.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's literally just finding vulnerabilities in systems and trying to penetrate those networks, penetrate the web application, whatever. Hoodie asked a very good question. Can I know what the environment looks like in a real world pen test? Is it white box, black box? So this is actually more of an it depends question. So there's a lot of different types of pen testing out here, and vulnerability analysis, and what I English is not with me today. And then there's like red team operations, and there's like all different kinds of things that you can do. It depends on what the client's looking for. Is it a compliance test? Is it a SOC 2 test? Is it a ISO 27001 test? Is it they just want to know what vulnerabilities they have? Mm-hmm. Is it a full-blown attack and breach simulation? Now, a lot of the pen tests that I do specifically are white box pen tests. They give us credentials. They let us know. They call it a recursive directory listing, which means they give us everything on the system. We have a copy of the entire file system and a text file, and we can look at all that. So we get access to everything because our goal is to find as much as possible. But our goal is not necessarily to get remote code execution. It's more of a vulnerability assessment, to be honest. That's what I was looking for. Assessment. Jesus. So it's more of a vulnerability assessment. It's a white box pen test. It's a compliance test. We're trying to find as much as humanly possible. If we get remote code execution, we're not going past that. This is contact the client. Let them know what we're allowed to test for. Do a who am I? Even with like CSRF. The most we'll do is get we'll mess around with like Collaborator inside a Burp Suite or something. Nothing like super complex, nothing damaging. We use UAT environments. They're like QA environments or like testing environments. We don't really test in prod, which is actually something that a lot of companies should not do. You should not test in prod. That is going to, there's a very strong likelihood that if I'm, scanning with a vulnerability scanner, you're about to have like 30,000 things in your database that's just random stuff, right? Definitely test in an environment that you can shut down, redeploy, delete the DB, and it's not going to interact with customers. The last thing you want is to be hitting like an endpoint that's going to send emails to somebody, and you now sent somebody like 50,000 emails.
Yeah.
Right.
That would be a bad day for you. So let's see, Miss, and this will be the last question because we're getting onto the top of the hour. Let's see. Let me exit that. So, is it best to get experience in cyber, or is it possible to just jump into pen testing with a company? I'll let you answer that first, and I'll give my 2 cents.
Yeah. I would at least learn the fundamentals. Yeah. Hoodie, it's more like that. Yeah. They still call it a pen test. Don't ask me. I just work there, right? Yeah. So I would learn the fundamentals at least. You can get a junior position, and there's a lot of companies that are very good about training you on processes, getting you set up with labs. You can shadow some people. I think like the first 3 months I was at where I'm working, um, I was on retesting before I went on enterprise testing. So I actually got lucky. I got to test and make sure that the findings were actually not there, which meant that I could, like, I didn't have to look for the findings. I'm just like studying these findings, making sure they're not there. That's some great stuff that juniors can do. If you can start off on retesting, that's a great way to start out. Not every company has a dedicated retesting team, but that's something cool to do. I don't think that you should just jump straight into a pen testing firm without knowing pen testing. At least know the fundamentals, and then they can help you.
Yeah, no, I to piggyback off that, I think the
Yeah.
same thing. Like, I don't think jumping into a pen testing firm is the best idea. Like,
Yeah.
at the very least, like, set up your own pen testing.
Yeah.
That's why I really harp on home labs,
Oh
setting up
yeah.
your own home lab, and just start pen testing, do little small bug bounties, and just like use like
Yeah.
Juice Shop or Port Swigger, and
Yeah.
like these applications, and like even like the like TCM.
Yeah.
I love TCM security, and from what I've been
So do
told,
I.
I'm going to be doing their junior web app tester because I want to
Yeah.
brush up my skills. And I think it was Alex that told me, he's like, "Oh, if you're going to do this, like, we have a lab set up, like it's a Docker, and then we can, you can see this." And I think it was I don't even remember who the hell it was, but
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Like, so if I get this training, I can jump in and fucking mess around with this, and they give you your own applications. So, maybe it was someone that actually took the exam that I know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and going back to Hoodie, it's a vulnerability assessment pen test,
Yeah. Yeah.
VATP, not a pen test. Thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
a
And
lot of companies do that. It's
yeah,
like,
and just to like piggyback off that,
mhm,
it really depends on what the client is looking for. So sometimes it'll be a VApp, sometimes it'll be an actual pen test, sometimes it'll be a red team operation or a phishing campaign, social engineering, or literally trying to break into their site.
yeah,
Um, you know,
physical pen
yeah,
testing.
physical pen testing. Yeah, going out to location,
I
trying
did a
to get
few of
inside the
them.
doors.
I love
Yeah,
that. That's
I
fun.
want to do one so bad. I have not done one yet. I
Yeah,
really want to do one. It sounds so fun.
yeah. The last one I did, I went out to Arizona,
Yeah,
and we went. Obviously, with that, obviously there comes a lot of
yeah,
reconnaissance. You go on Google
yeah,
Maps, and you're like, you scope the place out, right? And you just
yeah.
want to make sure, okay, like, if
See if they
this
have
is
cameras. Can we
can
intercept them? Can
exactly,
we? Are they on Ethernet, or are they being stupid in their Wi-Fi cameras? Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was on site here, we were trying to get into a side door, and I'll never forget this. And I thought, like, I asked someone that was there with me. They're like, "Oh, like, we want to see if we can spray compressed air under the door to trigger a sensor." I'm like, this guy's stupid. Like, what the fuck are you
Yeah.
talking about? Trigger a sensor, like, what, a compressed air, like literally one of
Yeah.
these. This. He like used this fucking
Yeah.
thing, and he like
Yeah.
sprayed under it, and like he triggered the door. And I'm like, holy
Yeah.
shit, dude! Like, how the fuck do you
I
just do
saw
that?
someone do that with like vape smoke on YouTube or something. It was like, what the hell?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
how is this door not even? How is this door locked?
yeah,
Right? Like,
exactly. So it was really
right.
interesting. So we were able to get into that, and then like the next day, because we tested, I think, for 3 days, just to different avenues. Like, if we got in through that way, then one day we'll like see if we can bypass the receptionist to see how far we can get, see if we can get
Yeah.
into an MDF or an IDF or just a certain area. Obviously, there's what you have to do with what English is hard today for me too.
Yeah.
Whatever is in scope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, we're not going to go into the fucking CEO's office or whatever.
Right.
Like, whatever's off limits, you don't go into. But like, yeah, I was able to go in, and they were calling me Briefcase Patty because I don't dress to impress ever. Like, if you
Yeah.
ever see me, I remember I went out to Romania. Yeah, I went out to
Yeah.
Romania for like a conference, and I was on this big stage with fucking sweatpants and Jordans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's me. That's how I always
That's
be.
that. That's literally where I'm wearing right now. A beanie, some like broken headphones, a t-shirt I got like 3 years ago,
Oh
and some
yeah,
like holy sweatpants.
exactly. So like, and I remember for this engagement, I remember this specifically, the CEO, because he knew me. You know, even when I would go
Yeah.
to the office, I would go there with like sweatpants or like joggers or
Yeah.
whatever. Like I never wore jeans or whatever. And he's like, Pat, can you at least like be a little more spiffy? And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
shit. Like, so then I wore like loafers and like, you know, slacks and everything. Like I was going on a hot date. I was like, oh shit. Like, here we go.
Right.
And because you have to be a little more presentable because you're going in there
Yeah.
with sweats and some fucking looking like a little hoodlum. It's like, oh
Right.
shit. What the fuck are you
Yeah,
got?
my parents, my grandmother, everybody that I hang out with tell me that I show up looking like I'm homeless.
Yeah,
Right? You know, and
exactly.
I dress for comfort. Like
Yeah,
this
me
is
too.
what I'm comfortable in, and if I'm going to be sitting in a chair or I'm going to be running around for 8 hours, I want to be
Mhm.
comfortable. I don't want to
Exactly.
run around and be like sweating inside of a tuxedo or a
Exactly.
little fedora. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, fuck that. All right, so we're at the top of the hour. I
Yep.
think Hoodie said it. It was Sammy Kumar. There was a great guy having a worm of his name, and the MySpace guy. I don't know what
I
he's
don't know. I
talking.
don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is. But yeah, I just want to say, you know, obviously, thank you, Ryan. It was finally. I'm glad we were able to make this happen. If you guys want to reach you, like, how can they connect with you if they want to reach you with, connect with you? Any ways?
I hang out in the Parrot CTFs Discord. I'm Parrot Assassin 15 on TikTok and YouTube. I don't post on YouTube that much. Instagram. Just direct message me. I answer all of my DMs. Even the stupid ones that want me to hack their ex-girlfriend's account or whatever.
Yeah.
But I answer them all. So if you have a question, I'll eventually get to it.
Yeah, awesome. And if you guys have any questions for me, if you forget, just reach out to me, and I can definitely get you into contact with Ryan.